Hey everyone, Maria here with an exciting opportunity for any of our listeners who are also new poker players. Nate and I are looking for a beginning player who is heading to this year's World Series of Poker. We might want to talk with you before the tournament, hear your story, maybe even offer you some advice. Reach out to riskybusiness@pushkin.fm if you're interested. No guarantees, but here comes our first piece of advice. It's plus EV to send that email. Welcome back to Risky Business, a show about making better decisions. I'm Maria Konnikova.
And I'm Nate Silver.
Today on the show, we have a very special guest, Vanessa Selbst. Vanessa and I first met when we were both PokerStars Team Pros. I was just starting out playing poker, and Vanessa was just getting the hell out of there. And Vanessa remains one of the most impressive people I have ever met in or out of poker. Yale undergrad, Yale Law School, only female poker player ever to have reached number one on the GPI, that's Global Poker Index rankings overall. So both men and women, like just number one, period. But only female to have ever done that, over 11 million in earnings, 3 World Series of Poker bracelets, and then left it all behind, left that glamorous life behind to join Bridgewater Associates and go into the hedge fund world, after which she went to Jane Street Capital, which is where we find her today. Welcome to the show, Vanessa.
Thanks, Maria. Thank you for that intro. It's definitely more than I deserve, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
And Nate, how long have you known Vanessa?
I think I knew her kind of about the time, maybe when she quit. Maybe I reached out and I'm like, oh, if you've kind of left poker for other things, I don't know, sent some stupid cold email, I think, and we wound up becoming friends, and we have a lot in common. And so I'm a huge admirer of Vanessa as well.
That's not right at all, Nate. We met at a really awkward, what my wife was joking was like a really awkward date. You don't remember this in Aussie Millions in like...
Oh, Aussie Millions. Okay.
In like 2012 or 2014. I don't even know what year it was, but like, I don't know. The people at Aussie Millions were like, Nate Silver wants to meet you. I was like, oh, I want to meet him. And then we went on we had dinner, but it was just like super awkward and funny, but like it was a good time.
I'd suppress that memory.
And then so that was when we first hung out, but then we didn't really start hanging out till a few years later. So I just didn't know. That was a very special, one of my awkwardest dates that I've ever had. So I guess it was more meaningfully awkward to me, but that's okay. It was a good time.
So I remember the first time I met you was in Monte Carlo. It was my first ever PokerStars stop. And it was my first ever major tournament period. I knew, I had known nothing about poker, and kind of there I was, and Eric Seidel introduced us. Eric Seidel, obviously, you know who he is, and listeners of the show know who he is, one of the greatest players of all time, became my coach. And he was like, I want you to meet Vanessa Selbst. She's really, really impressive. And I was like, I don't want to meet Vanessa. She scares me.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then we met, and at first I was like, I don't think she likes me. And Eric's like, no, she likes you. And then we became friends, and I realized that you were actually pretty amazing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was great to meet you, the beginning of a great friendship. It is funny that you say that, because there is this thing where there's this not to get too whatever serious about kind of a lighthearted anecdote, but it's like there really is this thing where you're on TV and you're just playing poker in general, not even on TV, where you're like, you have your game face, you're like in the zone, and I get really intense when I'm playing, and I'm like really concentrating, and I'm also often like playing pretty aggressive, so there's this like weird like crossover between your poker style and your personality, right? And so I can come across as like really intense, and I get really intense sometimes, like I'm really in the moment, and I think sometimes it would just be like really intense, and people would be like, "Oh my God, who is this person?"
But you're very you're very self-possessed, and I never want to make assumptions about someone's inner confidence level versus how they project outwardly. But did you feel like it was an advantage to be on TV?
Was it an advantage that I got to be on TV playing poker? Like, absolutely.
Do you feel? I guess. Do you felt like you played better on TV relative, or maybe everyone plays worse because there's more external factors to deal with. But did you if you were told, I'm at whatever day of the World Series main event, right? You're the feature table. Are you happy about that or not?
Oh man, that's a complicated question. That's a good question. It's a complicated question because I didn't actually like the act of being on TV, if you will. I definitely had an advantage over my competitors at a random World Series tournament where I've been on that stage a million times and they haven't. And I'm going to make better decisions and stuff. But I just didn't like it on a visceral level. But being on TV was actually a huge advantage for me. I kind of utilized that. Basically, what I mean to say is I got a reputation. The first time I was ever on TV, I made this really crazy bluff. I 4-bet all in with 2-5 suited. It was a thing that happens now occasionally. Is still considered a reckless play, but at the time, it was 2006. And no one had ever seen anyone do that or had any idea. You know what I mean? You re-raised with pocket aces, maybe ace king if you were feeling bluffy, at the time. And so when that happened, I got this reputation as being the craziest person in the world, in poker.
And by the way, you managed to run into aces in that hand.
I did manage to run into aces. And I don't know if that was a coincidence, having just explained that most people that 3-bet usually had aces. So the point just being it was this crazy play and everybody kind of took notice, I don't look like your typical poker player. I wasn't playing like your typical poker player. Who is this person? And I think that stuck out in people's minds so much that I just instantly got this reputation for being this crazy player, to the point where I would play games and I would end up in 1,000 big blind pots, meaning for the average viewer, meaning pots that were way bigger than your average pot, just a giant pot. And I would go all in on the river and I would get called by ace high. And you're just how do I end up in a situation where there's 1,000 big blinds in the middle and I'm being called by ace high? And so anyway, to get back to the original point of what I was saying, I was just this crazy player and I was never going to shake that image. And so it's honestly part of what led me to retire from poker, because it was pretty boring. I really just couldn't bluff nearly as much as your average person. Every story was so I knew they had third pairs, so I just gave up. Or I decided I was either going to put in, my entire stack or give up. And so what I ended up doing was realizing I was okay, I get the most action of any player ever. So I just have to play tight. This is the most profitable strategy by far. So whenever I went on TV, if there was ever a close decision between make an aggressive action like bluff or raise, or just fold or call, I always took the aggressive action. And sometimes even when it wasn't a close decision, when I, 5-bet shove with Jackson suit or whatever, I wasn't trying to light money on fire, but it was this really weird, real thing where it was I would give up a little bit of equity or a lot of equity sometimes to just kind of maintain this crazy image, because, and I can say this now because I don't play poker anymore, but it was a decade of me just playing. I would say, post-flop I was pretty aggressive, but pre-flop I was probably tighter than 90% of the table, honestly. Because I could never shake that image anyway. So I was just let me use these TV time as a way to kind of keep up my reputation, and people just believe what they see on TV, and that was just the most profitable way to play.
Yeah, so I think you're raising a really interesting point, which is that, when you're talking about, we love poker on this show, not just because we all play poker, but because it's such a great way of looking at decision making. And I think you're raising a really important point, which is that no decision is made in a vacuum, right? I have a very different reputation from yours, but I've been a bounty in big events and I hate it because you can't bluff, right? It's kind of the same thing.
We have this funny thing where we'll talk up. So you've said, I think a couple times, Maria, we're okay, when you make a big shove or a big bet on the river and an opponent tanks, and if you're not a poker fan, that means they're waiting, at least half a minute to several minutes to make a decision, right? In my experience, when they tank against me, they fold 2/3 of the time, right? And you said it's the opposite.
For me, they call, right? For me, the longer they tank, the more I'm okay, motherfucker, just call already, right? I'm, just stop, take me out of my misery. And it is, it is so incredibly, I think that's one of the interesting things about poker. And I'm curious, how you see it both in poker and outside of poker, kind of that added layer to it, right? That there is it's not just the math, right? That every single risk assessment, every single decision is so dependent on the player, on the situation, on the dynamics, on all of those things. The math is there, right? The math matters, but there's so much more going on.
100%. And I think your point about like the longer it takes, that being the key point of divergence, is like a really great perception, because I think that is like, we have all these kind of emotional biases, and like, if you usually your brain is kind of leading the charge for the first like beginning of your decision making, right? And then eventually it's like the emotional the monkey brain or whatever takes over. And that's what I used to say about, to go back to that story about how people would call me with these crazy hands, and it's like they were hands where the only way it's a correct call if I'm like bluffing with a part of my range, like we're in spots you're supposed to bluff like 15%, they would have to have assumed I was bluffing like 80% to make the call. And it's like, okay, you see a person who's had like very good poker results. Could I be like the 1.01% luckiest person and just a terrible poker player? I guess it's possible, although like from a Bayesian perspective, like probably like if you the other prior is that like you're wrong about my range, like probably that should be a stronger prior, but like, hey, never mind. So, people would make these calls where I'm like, okay, the only way that this call could be correct is if I'm just a terrible player and getting lucky all the time. Like there's no way that I could be a successful player and be bluffing the frequency that it needs to be. But it didn't matter. Like it was just like, I've seen you on TV. You know what I mean? Or like, I'm not going to be bluffed by you. I'm not going to be bullied by you. And it was truly incredible, because if you really just thought about it from a logical decision making, like rational perspective, it would just be an absurd way to play against anyone.
So I'm curious. So you think when people take longer to make a decision, that they get more emotional? Because people would say, "Well, I'm going through all the different combinations and thinking through things carefully." You think that like actually kind of like?
I think mostly a few people are thinking through the combinations, but
even if you're thinking through the combinations, I think like even in a really complicated way, it takes you like max 30 seconds to get like 90% of the way there. Like I just think that time is allowing so much more emotional stuff to creep in that it's just like the ratio of like math to emotion is just like definitely going down over time.
Totally agree.
You were kind of playing in the era before solvers became quite so ubiquitous.
I don't think they existed at the beginning.
I've literally never used a solver before, so.
And a solver, if you're not aware at home, is a product that literally solves the Nash equilibrium for a poker
Not
hand?
Literally, since it doesn't actually exist, but yes.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well,
Are you a Nash equilibrium truther?
No, but because poker's an unsolved game, it approximates a solution, but
that's
it's not
true.
actually
It does break
solving
down. It. That's true. Wow.
Sorry.
That is true. Technically. Actually, I feel like we need that meme.
I'm a literally truther, so.
Yeah.
How would you play differently today? Do you think you'd try to be more quote unquote GTO driven, or less so, or the same?
That's a great question. And so my goal is just to make the most money, right? It's not to like play in a way that makes Jane Street look more like a reasonable place and not make crazy bluffs, right? So, okay, just as under that premise, I would say, so in my career, I'm a trader, like poker player, trader, whatever it is. Like you think about where does your edge come from? And it's certainly for me not in playing GTO better than anybody else at this point. Like I've literally never used a solver. I've never studied it. I'm also very unpracticed from the game. And so I don't even remember like what the lines that I'm supposed to take in various spots are. Like I used to come close enough to what the solvers would say if I had used them. It was actually like pretty cool. I would ask my friends and I'd be like, I kind of got there, just from understanding the theoretical underpinnings of the game. And I'm pretty far from that because I really play maybe once or twice a year at this point for the last almost decade. So, I would have to play less GTO. My strategy back then was to put people that were trying to play GTO that I thought were just kind of like memorizing. And like there's this class of poker players that was like successful because they were good at memorizing things and not that great at thinking through things. And so I was like, okay, let me sacrifice a little bit of EV on an early part of the hand in order to get them into a spot they're very unused to, uncomfortable with, and just out-reason them in a spot where the pot is much bigger. And I would just do that repeatedly, and kind of through doing that, I would, kind of figure out where the population where most players were making the most mistakes. And, and so I think I would just do that, but even more, because I think my edge there is probably still similar to what it is now. It would take me a while. I probably wouldn't be winning at first doing that, because I think part of the reason that was such a successful strategy for me was like, I would just see the same thing over and over. I would be like, I don't know, not to make it too pokery, but I'd be like, oh, I checked the turn in a spot that no one would, and then I would like raise small, and then, whatever, like some weird line that no one takes, but I would take it a lot. And so I would see how people would react over and over again. But I think like whenever you're making any decision, and I think this applies to trading way even more than poker, is just like thinking through really, really carefully, like, where does your edge come from? Where does my edge not come from? Where am I getting outplayed? And so that would have to be the answer.
No, I would much rather play against like a GTO perfect player than like Vanessa.
I think it's such a smart strategy, both in poker and in life, to put people in parts of the game tree where they're not as familiar, right? Get them out of their comfort zone. And I've been on the receiving end of that. When I was just starting out, there are some people who are very exploitative players. I still remember a hand I played against someone, Vanessa, Joe Chong. And he defended the blinds. I was a pre-flop raiser. He checked, I bet, and then he led the turn. And I was already planning to bet that turn. It was a perfect barrel card, and he led it. I was like, what the hell? What are you doing? And it really, I messed up. I ended up busting the tournament on that hand.
And he's probably done that a bunch of times, but now he kind of understands how people in their first time reacting to that react. And, the mistakes wind up being way bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's making a conscious decision. It's really interesting. One thing I have heard that, once again, I don't know anything about this, so if I might be speaking out of my ass, but I think you can like do things like node lock.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make some like assumptions about, the way a player will react in a certain spot, you can like, that's different than GTO. I think you can node lock, and then you can like kind of go back and say, okay, like conditional on them reacting a certain way.
Yep.
What is my GTO play? And like that's what GTO is about. It's not, or that's what like just I guess solid strategy and anything is about. It's not like supposed to be this rigid thing. It's supposed to be a way to say, okay, conditional on these assumptions I'm making about the world, what is the best course of action? The problem is that GTO, pure GTO, the assumption that it's relying on is that everybody else is going to play perfectly. And then if you condition on different assumptions, it's going to tell you like different things. And so that's pretty cool.
And we'll be back right after this. You have a unique background for people who went into the world of poker. And I mean, I think something that unites a lot of what you've done is kind of the competitive edge to it, the love of games. But you went to undergrad, you studied political science, right? And then you played poker after that. But then, even though you were ridiculously successful, you didn't go pro. You went to law school. And only then, after law school, did you go into professional poker. Can you talk us through that and how that thinking went, and kind of what the strand, whether the strand that I have picked out, kind of the competition and kind of the game aspect of it, is correct or not? How did that all work out?
I think it's not that deep for me. It was mostly me trying to convince myself I'm not a degenerate when in fact I am a degenerate. So yeah, that was, I mean, honestly, it was a lot of like, oh, this isn't actually what I'm doing for a career, right? Like that's not a real career. And so it was much more like a hobby. And honestly, it kind of always was a hobby for me.
When did you start playing?
I started playing in high school, like when we watched Rounders.
Oh, wow.
My friends and I used to play. Yeah, old school. And so, yeah, my friends and I used to play in like the lunchroom, but I started getting more serious at Yale. There was a game where like a bunch of people were like getting pretty serious about the game, and I discovered 2+2, and I started going to Foxwoods every week, and so the story goes. And then so I played for a few years, and it was okay, but then I don't know, I just like thought, I don't know, like you're from like a upper middle class Jewish background, you're like, you're taught like education, blah blah blah. Like I'd done well in school. I thought that was kind of just like the path. I thought this was just kind of like a fun sidetrack thing for me. And so, yeah, I took all my money offline when I went to law school, and I was like, I'm not not doing this. I'm not going to like fall into playing poker and ignore my studies. This is like a great opportunity. That's what I always wanted to do. And
You'd always
then,
wanted to be a
you know,
lawyer?
yeah. Yeah, I thought I did. I mean, that, there's like, you don't know what careers actually are available to you when you're younger, but
It's kind of dumb that they make you pick when you're young.
yeah, I know. Yeah, so I had no idea. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And I just ended up falling back into poker because I just ran like hotter than the sun in law school. Like there were these 4 tournaments that I played. Like there was one tournament at Foxwoods and one tournament at Mohegan, both years, and I played some like. It was like, a 3K, a 3K. There was a main event or something, and I just like won 3 of them and got third in the other one. It was just like
casually.
yeah, it was really dumb. It was. I mean, part of it was probably like I was not being in my own head anymore about like I was still not far enough removed from poker that I was still pretty good at it. Everybody else was terrible at that time, and I was just like feeling it. You know what I mean? I didn't care. I was just playing my game and stuff. So obviously I was also running hotter than the sun. And so I kind of just fell back into it at that point.
Have you seen 21, which is a movie adaptation of Bring Down the House, right?
Oh, yeah.
They like fly back from like Vegas with like tens of thousands of dollars in their pockets, right? And they have to like go to their fucking like Monday morning classes. Were you feeling like I am cooler and or smarter than these people?
Yeah. I mean, not cooler or smarter. That definitely wasn't. Smarter was definitely not up there, but I was like definitely like
both. Honestly, I would bet.
You know what
both.
I mean? I felt like on top of the world for sure. It was always really fun.
So how long were you kind of doing the whole poker tournament live world travel scene? And like just because like not many people do that, right? And
yeah,
I'm interested in you because you're not somebody. I think if you have a lot of aptitude, Vanessa, at a lot of things.
Yeah.
So you might not always find your way into this, but like, what's it like for someone like you, young, openly gay, very bright, is interested in politics in the world? What's it like kind of being on the poker scene for a few years, the kind of grindiness of it or the glamour of it?
Yeah. Honestly, I like never really felt like a poker pro. And I know that's weird to say. To answer your question, I would say it was like as close to full-time as I ever was from 2011 to 2017. So that was kind of like the main part of my poker career when I was mostly not doing other things, although I still dabbled in law. Because I think I was still always trying to convince myself that I wasn't really a poker player or something. But yeah, because honestly, it was hard. It was like, I think it can be really fun. Like it's you're playing poker. It's the ultimate lifestyle. You're seeing the world. I mean, I don't want to downplay. Like it was really great and it was really fun. You're seeing the world. Traveling from country to country or whatever. You get to play a game. Pretty much all day, every day, if you want to. If you wake up and you don't feel like going to work, you don't go to work. Like you're in ultimate control of everything. And at the end of the day, it's really fun. You're meeting really interesting people from all over the world. I did find it hard, I guess, to kind of stay informed and stay kind of doing things that felt like meaningful. I think a lot of poker players struggle with that, like finding meaning, like when you're just playing a card game all the time. It's like, kind of, what is the point of this, When I was doing law, my goal was to be a civil rights attorney, but I just, my brain is built in a certain way, and I tried being a lawyer, but it was horribly inefficient, and just like, I just couldn't do it. Like it just felt really slow and not like fun. And I think poker and trading is the thing that like gets me really excited in terms of the strategy. Like you're constantly making strategic decisions like every second of the day. So for me, it was just sort of like an evolution of my understanding of self that I knew this is what like made me happy. And then what do I have to do to make meaning for myself in the world? And so being in the poker world, it was just like hard to kind of be more well-rounded, like have interests in different places. It was like, when you're traveling, there's this weird disoriented thing of like being your physical environment kind of dictates like what you're thinking about or what you're focusing on. And so for me, it's like now I have a boring routine. I have kids. I wake up. I like have my boring commute. I like go to the office. You know what I mean? Like I just kind of like understand what life is.
If you have a big trade on, do you enjoy the sweat of that?
What he's asking is, are you still a D-Gen, Vanessa?
Am I still a D-Gen? Yeah, no, for sure I'm still a D-Gen, much more so than anybody else. I'm like, for sure, I like to, sweat the outcome of trades and stuff, but but much less than poker. Like, it's not like the most D-Gen exciting stuff.
Okay, so you're playing poker. I can imagine a very, very particular skill set. I don't know if I want to stereotype people. I can imagine a very particular type of person that has like poor social skills and was very undisciplined, right? For whom like poker is a maximizing amount of money. But for 97% of good players, then you can probably make more money doing something else. If you still want to be a degen, then you can go work for a hedge fund or something. But like, I mean, but when you
Shots fired.
how did you get into this industry? Because I mean, Vanessa, you quit, and literally the New York Times wrote about you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you find Bridgewater, or they found you, or you found them through friends, or how did this relationship come about?
It was just Galen, like Galen Hall, another really successful poker player. Like I didn't know anything about finance. I kind of thought of it as like, the Wolf of Wall Street kind of situation, So Galen was working at Bridgewater, and he was like, oh yeah, this place, like they'll hire you. They have a really good kind of like education program. And so I was just thrilled that, I'd heard about finance and like kind of how it was similar to poker. And my mom actually had been an options trader and an avid poker player.
That's amazing. By the way, what year was that? How did that happen?
She played poker basically to put herself through college, which I guess was in like 73 or 72. And then was an options trader like in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah. On the American Stock Exchange.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The only woman, I think.
I was going to say there must not have been very many.
It was basically just her. And so I'd heard about it, but I didn't know much about it. And so Galen was like, yeah, they'll teach you and whatever. So I was just told someone was like willing to give me a job. But yeah, ultimately it wasn't like the right fit. They're like kind of more, they do like kind of like long-term investment strategy stuff. And so it felt more like a think tank. Like I would try to get people to gamble with me on stuff, and they were just like, no. And I'm like, what? Like, what? Don't we work at like I would finally get people to gamble with me. They'd owe me like, $7.60 because like that's what they were comfortable gambling for. And they were like, or like whatever. And they're like, okay, can you pay me? And I'm like, yeah, like let's just flip until it's like 100 or 0. And you'll actually like this story. Literally, I'd have debts of like $13 that I would have to pay. And so I'd be like, okay, let's just flip, like, let's roll a 100-sided die. And I'll take 13 number, or you can take 13 numbers. And, if you get one of them, I'll give you $100. And they're like, no. I'm just like, they're like, I don't gamble. Like, I can't deal with this. So I went to the bank and I got a lot of rolls of pennies and some nickels. And I unrolled them all. A lot of them, like 100 rolls of pennies and like 100 rolls of nickels, and I put them in a bag under my desk. And anytime someone wanted me to pay them a debt in a number that wasn't a round number, I used to just sort through my bag of pennies and nickels and pay the debt that way.
Vanessa, that is amazing. That is the best story.
Yeah. And when I left, actually, my old coworkers met up at some point, like a few months later, and they were like, "Oh, we found this like bag of pennies under your desk. Wow. Did you want that?" I'm like, no. That's
so you worked with a bunch of nits, Vanessa, is what you're trying to tell us. It was insane.
I was like, literally, do you guys remember that this? But anyway, so it wasn't the same kind of fit. But luckily, that's where I heard about Jane Street, which is a much better fit. So,
do you feel like poker has kind of enabled you to excel in that kind of environment? Was it transferable, or were both of these things that you kind of carried with you both to poker and now to Bridgewater and then Jane Street? Like, is it what you're bringing to it, or did it impart knowledge that you're now using as well?
Oh, I mean, like, of course, like it's a completely different sphere. Like there was a ton to learn. There's still a ton to learn. Like I'm learning all the time. It's like such a complicated, complex like world. But poker, I mean, I didn't realize like just how much it mattered, like how much, whether it's just poker or just general strategic thinking. Like I think the way that poker players think is the way that traders think, like just thinking about things in expected values, but also just like thinking about the different players in a game and your motivations. Because if you're trading, someone else is on the other side of the trade. And particularly I trade options, and options are like really complex things where there's like a lot of different kinds of risk and different like kind of distributions of returns and whatever. And so you really have to think through like the different possible situations, the probabilities of them, what's someone's motivation, the whole concept of adverse selection, who am I trading against, what is their motivation. It really does feel like being in a poker game. And it's the reason like a lot of, there's a lot of poker players at the firm that are anywhere from casual poker players where there's always poker games going. We have poker tables in our like main cafeteria. And so there's always a poker game after work. And then, even at the World Series, a couple of the guys always go out. And one of them actually, I think, got like second or third. I don't actually remember, in one of the events last year. So there's like some serious poker players here, and it's not, it's not a coincidence. Like there's a huge amount of like crossover skills.
Do you find it hard to play against coworkers because of like the office politics dimension of it?
No. The only office politics are
Vanessa,
like
I love how you said that.
competition. No. It's like it's actually like amazing, because I think Jane Street is really good at this. Of like it's really competitive in the sense of like everybody comes from a place of like having really competitive background. Like a lot of the people that get hired are people that have a history of playing games or math competitions or whatever it is. Like a lot of people with like really competitive personalities. But Jane Street is a place that is very collaborative. Like out of all of the different trading firms or whatever, like just for a lot of reasons, like it's just like a very collaborative, like congenial place. So it's sort of like a great mix where we're like super competitive with each other at the poker table, but just in like a fun way, a place where people just really appreciate when someone like outplays someone else, and just like, oh yeah, props, like that was awesome. Like everyone just wants to outplay each other, and play really well. And like that's the joy of it, is just like finding the best play and figuring it out,
And we'll be right back after this break.
Is that a GPI award that I spy over your shoulder? Is poker
so
still?
It's a bookend. It's a bookend, yeah.
But it is a GPI.
I'm using it as a bookend.
You're using it, no, but don't skirt the question. You're
I
not.
use my Nobel Prize as a bookend. It's so unimportant to me.
So
No,
funny. I guess it is, yeah. Actually, you'll like this too. I just finally cleaned out my garage after 4 years. I'm renovating the basement, and we moved here 4 years ago. I'm in Montclair, New Jersey, and we realized I hadn't really unpacked. So I finally found all of my old trophies. This is now sitting in my office. It's my old Partouche poker tournament. This is the biggest tournament I ever won. It's covered in hay.
This is amazing.
Here, let's see if we can find some hay. Here you go. There's like a whole bunch of hay everywhere. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
Because my wife decided that it was a good idea to purchase lots of different bales of hay and keep them also in our garage. So now because I don't know, you have to decorate for fall. I don't know. There's like a lapse. She's very into decorating, and there's apparently a lapse between Halloween and Christmas that involves lots of barrels of hay. But anyway, all of my old trophies are now covered in hay, and have like lots of cracks. So I got to figure out what to do with them. Maybe like some kind of weapon. My kids were trying to use them as weapons. But
so Partouche was the biggest tournament you ever won?
Yeah, and the biggest trophy.
That's amazing. Vanessa, were you at the Partouche with the cheating scandal, or was that not your year?
Oh yeah, that was my year. Yeah, that's a great memory that you remember that.
Well,
yeah,
I'm writing a book about cheating right now, so.
Oh, awesome.
So for people who aren't familiar, since you were there, this is a great story, and involves journalism or faux journalism and a lot of different things. So, Vanessa, do you want to tell us a little bit about your Partouche victory and this crazy moment?
Yeah. So, well, from my perspective, I was a chip leader going into the final table, and it was the delayed final table, which was crazy. So we finished the tournament in September and played down to the final table, and then played the final table in November. So we had like 2 months to stew on it. So I'm having like literal nightmares that I'm like chip leader, my equity. It was the biggest tournament I ever played. First prize was almost 2 million, and I was having nightmares that I would like bust out ninth. So when I get there and they're like, "Oh, congratulations, everyone's got at least eighth," and I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna win this now," like basically all of my nightmares were no more. But yeah, so when I got there, they were like, "Yeah, you're all guaranteed eighth." We're like, "What?" They're like, "Oh yeah, one of the guys was just like cheating the whole time throughout the whole tournament and also on the whole poker tour." Yeah, he had these like journalists, I guess, with this like fake website that had nothing on it. I think it was like, I don't remember the name of the site, but he would just have like fake journalists stand behind people and like fake report, and then just like give signs to this guy Ali. What was his name?
His name was Ali Tekentumgak.
Tekentumgak. There you go. Yeah,
That's a pretty good fucking cheat.
Yeah, so he would just give them signals on like what they had, and he was just like looking over people's shoulders. It was so old school. There's no devices. There's no like, poker's gotten a lot more sophisticated. Like we've gotten poker cheating solvers now. I feel like that are just they're like, that is not the GTO way to cheat. Like the GTO way to cheat with this strategy would have at least involved having a legitimate poker blog that had some words on it. But yeah, so he was finally discovered.
See, you can't trust journalists. See,
well, it was one of those things where when I heard that story, I was like, oh wow, like you really need to learn how to protect your cards. Like, just it's crazy that cheating. I mean, cheating has always been a part of whenever there's money, even when there's no money, there's cheating. People cheat on trivia nights. But yeah, I just remember that he had the fake journalists who would look at people's cards and just hand signs, completely old school. And you think about all this.
Do they have like the press hats and stuff like that?
They had all of these things.
It went on for like a year and a half or something crazy. Like it was, but like the number of cheating scandals that you've read about and been like, wow, if you were just a little less greedy, you could have gotten away with this forever.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? No, I think that's the case with most of them, whether or not it's poker, that if you just cheated a little bit smarter and, got out a little bit faster, we would not know about it. And some of the biggest cheating stories in poker, they did get out. And so
my God, what a nice teaser for your book.
You have people's reputation that is more or less intact.
Really? Are you going to uncover some of this in your book?
I will have to have some allegedlys in there. I will tell you that one of the people is no longer alive. So you could probably put two and two together.
But yeah, that's my favorite guy.
Might he have been from the southern United States?
Yeah.
Nate's accents,
I don't know.
Man. So are you now that you're kind of settled down, how do you feel about poker? I'm actually just curious. We obviously know it's a big part of your life because you have your GPI award in your Zoom background, and you've got your part.
I'm never going to live that down.
No, you're not. And you've got your part. I mean, I've got
Is that World Series poker carpeting, I think? No, I'm just kidding.
Wear your bracelets, Vanessa. But I mean, it is remarkable that, there's a numbers game. A lot of things have changed in the game since you've left, but a lot of things haven't. This year was a record low number of women in the WSOP main event. It went down.
I didn't realize that. It's just like low enough that it's just variance,
it was
basically.
just exactly. In terms of like the last, when people have been tracking this, there's still so when I won my first bracelet this year, I was, I think, woman number.
I didn't know you won a bracelet. Wait, what?
So I was woman number like 29, I think it was. I don't remember. It was under 30 women who've won open bracelet events since the beginning.
What did you win? How did I not know? I really don't follow poker at all, but congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. It was
what was it?
888 Crazy Eights.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was fun, but it was women are still not really winning open events. Like, so if you don't count the women's events and you don't count seniors.
Yeah.
It's still under 30. Like I said, I think I was number 29. I don't actually remember.
Nate, do you feel embarrassed to be in the presence of two bracelet winners?
I am. I fucking got second a couple years ago. I mean, we're going to grind this year, though. We're going to grind. We're going to grind the schedule hard this year.
So I'm curious kind of how, given your legacy and that you're still, I mean, if I were to say like, who is the person I most look up to in the game, it would be you, honestly, because of what you've accomplished. And it does, it means a lot, like where you came from and, kind of what you've done. And I don't know who's number two, right? Like you're kind of in a category of your own. Sweet. So how do you think about your legacy? You're still very much alive and still playing, but like how is that a part of your life other than, being a part of your Zoom background?
Oh man, I don't know. It's weird. I was just never one to think that much about that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. It just wasn't me. Like I didn't like all that the attention about it and the pomp and circumstance of it and all. I don't know.
That's fair.
Look, Kristen Bicknell is probably gonna like win a bunch more money like this year. She's gonna overtake that spot. And then I'll just be some random has-been,
I don't think
that'll be good.
No, you'll be the deuce five into aces. Never,
exactly.
never the random has-been. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I do feel like I'm in a spot where, like, for a few years, I felt like I want nothing to do with this game. And I find myself, like, coming around, like, remembering why I love the game. Like, I really had, like, a love-hate relationship followed by, like, a hate-hate relationship with it towards the end. Like, we would hang out and you'd be like, my friends, at the end of my poker group, my friends would be like, so we're going to go play the tournament? I'm like, nah, I'll see you later. Let me know when you bust, But now I feel like whenever I'm playing, I'm having fun again. And I don't feel, like, burdened by all of the different stuff that came with the, I don't know. So I enjoy playing again.
If you're at a random dinner party, you don't know somebody super well, right? Was it more awkward to introduce yourself as a poker player or as a hedge fund employee?
Miranda, actually, my wife, has this funny joke because I used to go around, and people would talk about it all the time, and I was used to getting all this attention and stuff. So I would just be like, oh, like, whatever, I play poker, and I would try to change the subject. And now I, like, go out to people and I'm like, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a trader, like, in finance.
Trader,
and
okay.
they just, like, look around. But I used to be a poker player. They're, like, so bored by the time I finish the sentence. I'm like, no, I swear to God, I'm a little more interesting. So the grass is always greener, I guess.
So what's next for you? What does the future hold for Vanessa?
I don't know. What is it? I mean, who knows, really? I love my job, so hopefully I'll do that for a little while, at least, and kind of play it by ear. Honestly, I don't see myself, like, reinventing myself again, but I think some combination of trading, poker, hobbies, spend time with the kids. Like, my kids are a really fun age. They're almost 5 and almost 7.
Time to start them playing poker.
Yeah, I know. No, it really is. My older one, Felix, his friend, is really into poker, and so I keep trying to be like, let's go over to Clark's house and, like, let's go play poker. Yeah, so some combination of that stuff. Like, I think probably my guess is, like, when I'm retired or something, and maybe, who knows, 10 years or 10, 15 years, like, just poker much more recreationally. I'll have to get you guys to, like, start a regular home game.
That will be fun. We'll make the hardest home game in New York.
Seniors League poker.
It will be fun. Well, Vanessa, this has been such an absolute pleasure. I am so glad that Eric introduced us and that I got to meet you. And I don't know, I think you have made my life richer, and I hope that all of our listeners will have learned something from listening to you today. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. We appreciate you spending this time with us.
Let us know what you think of the show. Reach out to us at riskybusiness@pushkin.fm. And by the way, if you're a Pushkin Plus subscriber, we have some bonus content for you. We'll be answering a listener question each week. That's coming up right after the credits.
And if you're not subscribing yet, consider signing up. For just $6.99 a month, what a nice price. You get access to all that premium content and ad-free listening across Pushkin's entire network of shows.
Risky Business is hosted by me, Maria Konnikova.
And by me, Nate Silver. The show is a co-production of Pushkin Industries and iHeartMedia. This episode was produced by Isabel Carter. Our associate producer is Sonia Gerwit. Sally Helm is our editor, and our executive producer is Jacob Goldstein. Mixing by Sarah Bruguer.
If you like this show, please rate and review us so other people can find us too. Thanks so much for tuning in.